thinking about the stress caused by prejudice, stereotyping, and discrimination. Wondering if the International Women's Day is worth all the hype? Pause, think about it with intentional thought, and consider where we go from here. Stay tuned and hear what Cathleen Hassan got to say to break the bias for sustainable gender equality. Join our co-sponsors, Dom Dev Enterprises and Page Investment, and our friends at Something to Think About. Ask your question, post them online, and we will endeavor to answer them all. We'll be right back.
Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles.
Welcome to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. What we think, we become. What we radiate, we attract. And what we imagine, we surely can achieve. Let's change the narrative 2 for 2. So this evening we have another special guest. You know, we like special guests on our show. And we have the one and only Cathleen Hassan. She's an attorney, counsel. She's been around for about 40 years in the industry. She's the managing of the firm Johnson-Hassan Co. for about 29 years so far, and Tinkin, and she is a graduate of many schools. We have the Miami Dade, McGill University, which we know is special. Then you got Kingston Polytechnic, now Kingston University, which is another special school up there in London. And, you know, she has a whole long bio that we can see on Facebook or YouTube and read it all about. So we don't want to tie up the show too much with that. But we want to welcome you, Catherine. And, you know, church is one of the big things for you. And so I know we're going to have fun tonight. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. See, the jokes are already started.
I noticed how you introduced them, so you start with a challenge.
Oh, yes. But that's the idea, you know. We got to try and figure out how we could get over obstacles so that we could become successful in all of the things that we want to do. And particularly our youth of the nation, because they're the ones who got to take the baton and make it all better for all of us. Awesome. So when we look at the topic of today, break the bias for sustainable gender equality, what does that speak to you?
Yeah. First, it speaks to me on the word bias. We can speak very positively about what we've achieved and how far we've come. There are certain yardsticks that we can point to. Today's focus really is on the development of women and whether we as women have truly made any progress, whether we are moving towards equality for genders. And so I know that there is still a lot of bias, extreme bias, and in some areas it seems to be deepening rather than lessening.
Right.
We had an occasion where we celebrated this morning out by Prince George Dome the commemoration of the statute known as the Madonna Child. And it's clearly a statute of African woman. She's barefoot. She has a child that is naked in her arms. And she's carrying a pouch on her side like a bag, a money bag.
Right.
The symbol speaks to several things, you know. It speaks to the woman actually being resourceful and having resources. But the state of her, especially the fact that she has no shoes on, speaks to hard work, but just not hard work. I think it speaks to the sacrifice that woman symbolizes for a female and in a female. And so when we talk about breaking a bias,
Right.
we need to identify what some of those bias points are to see whether they are broken, whether they are in the process of being broken, or whether they really haven't taken off as yet to be broken.
Right. So we can talk about all of those things, points tonight, and this little short interview that we have, because So, but let's start back by saying and give honor to the fact that today is International Women's Day, and so
Correct.
could you highlight what is International Women's Day and its importance, why we are highlighting it today?
Yes. Today is significant because worldwide, the United Nations, which is obviously a composite of many nations from around the world, has seriously looked at the woman in a separate capacity. What is the woman in every nation? Not just the Bahamas, not just to the west. But you look into the east, the southern countries, all over the world. So you have Africa, Asia, Latin America, the North America, and then you have the other places around, the other islands, island nations around that really need to focus on women. Now, why women? We know that without women, we wouldn't have a world.
Oh, man.
And that's the significance of a female. The females continue the world. Females birth the people that run the world. And if you go back to biblical times, in Genesis, when God created man, he formed woman. He formed woman.
Yes, formed, yeah.
And he formed woman for a specific purpose. The woman was taken out of the side of man and formed. The woman carries what a man can never carry. And that's the essential aspect of the woman. And so for the world to recognize an International Women's Day, I think is very important, and it symbolizes the importance of who the female is, who the woman is. And so I see that as a significant point, and women need to focus on it. I believe too many times people seek to put a woman in a category of, yes, she's here to serve a purpose. And on too many occasions, it seems as though the woman sits underneath the man. Not really to the side, but it's underneath. You know, they say behind every good man, there's a
Good
woman.
ones.
Yeah, but we're behind.
Right.
We're
Well,
not
I mean,
in the
that's
front.
that's
And
old
not to the
old
side.
English. That's old English language, eh?
It's all English language, but unfortunately, I think it has had a lot of historical impact in many societies where women are just seen like that, behind the man. And so that's what I find significant about International Women's Day. And that's one of the biases that I think we'll need to work towards eradicating.
Right. So,
And I think
what
that
else-
from a
Oh, sorry.
perspective
Go
of a
ahead.
Christian woman, I want you to know that, sir. From the perspective of a Christian woman. Yes, so I don't know if you're going to challenge on that, but
No, I missed the
want
last
to keep
piece you
both
said.
aspects. I said I say that the bias needs to be eradicated even from a Christian perspective.
Oh, yes. Yes. No, we agree on that sense, and that goes with maturity and education and the like as we move forward as a people. And so when we look at this whole picture of you highlighting why it is and the biases and the like, then what would be considered some of the significant inequalities that is affecting the women globally? Let's not talk about the Bahamas yet. We can get to that, but globally, what are the key things?
Globally, these are some of the factors that I've made a note of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when we look at one of the main areas is violence.
Mm-hmm.
The violence against the woman. Another main area is providing an environment where a woman, her care and domestic needs, particularly with regard to her children, become a part of the fabric of concern for a society,
Mm-hmm.
not an afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the issue of work. There is a gender inequality when it comes to a woman receiving the same pay for the same job. Not just that, the inequality with regard to work is that if you have a female candidate and a male candidate
Mm-hmm.
for the same post, the likelihood is the male will get that post before the woman. The woman may get the post, but she would have to be proven to be an exceptional candidate versus the male candidate. That's a bias.
Is that really true, or is it that we have these concepts in our head that tell us that when a woman is in that position, that there's going to be extra coming along with it, and so then that means that that's more energy and effort going to have to go behind it, and so then we over exaggerate certain things. I'm not saying things doesn't exist. I'm saying is it that we over exaggerate certain things. Because when we look at it from a man's point of view, they're only looking for the job to get done, right? And so if the job could get done without the extra, then what do you say to that?
No, I would agree with you.
Okay.
And for this reason, and in fact, I'll tell you, my youngest daughter, she pointed out something to me, and she said, the reality, she's under 30.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, the reality is that the decision makers, whether it be for jobs, scholarships, awards, positions, titles, the decision makers are always predominantly male. They're not predominantly female. And if you look at society, you would find that for the woman to achieve what the woman feels is important, the woman has to create the environment herself through groups, through financing, through pressing it. The woman must do it. The man is content. I think you didn't say that word, but I'm going to put that word in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
The man is content to say, I don't see any issues. Why? Because the male has no issues when it comes to those categories. The male is comfortable because the male is there.
Mm-hmm.
And the likelihood of a promotion, they naturally think about somebody who would be able to understand the way they think, therefore make decisions the way they think, who would be a better team player, who will not rob the boat, so forth and so on. They automatically will go towards the direction of another male. And I mean, they like to say women are emotional, they're this, they're that, they're that. You know, they make their own reasons why a woman shouldn't take that post. They fail to see that in the reasoning of a female comes your strength. Because the female can think in a wider perspective than a man. I mean, I don't mean to insult men, you know what I mean?
No, I understand what you're saying, but I mean, you love your piece.
The female is experienced in multitasking. And that's their strength.
Right.
but isn't seen as a strength by too many men in power or leadership or who are the decision makers. So that's the
Right.
kind of bias we have. And then still thinking about work. You know, there was an article in the newspaper today called Fem STEM.
Yeah,
I don't know if you saw it.
No, I didn't see it, but I
And
heard about it. Yeah.
yes, it's about the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics part of employment and the opportunities on the science side.
Right.
Why does it have to be Fem STEM? Why is it that the women cannot just come into that environment, have opportunities open for them in that environment without having to make it feminine? That's a bias.
So yes, that is a bias, but is that bias put on by women more so than men, or men? Because see, the thing is this, right? You have some of these things. It's women who are adding these things, these what you call it, adjectives and stuff to the titles and stuff like that. So it has significant and be different and have the attention, and that's what people talk about being extra, right? And so, but just to know, my questions doesn't necessarily mean that these are my personal views, right? I'm just trying to make sure we get everything on the table, right? Right?
Yes.
Right.
Sorry.
Cool.
Yes.
No problem. So when we look at
that.
yeah, when we look at all of this in the picture, before we move on, I would say that I've witnessed a number of ladies as leaders or managers and the like, and I find that a lot of them are way harder and more aggressive and stuff than a lot of the males. So I don't know what is driving that, but that's so when we talk about that part, that's a significant. So now let's bring it all home. Now let's touch down here in the Bahama land. We've had a varied history of many different people invading the Bahamas and so forth. But let's not go back further than majority rule time frame, because my memory don't go back that far, too clearly. Right? That's too far back in history. So what is the Bahamas inequality experience today?
You mean in the 2020s?
Like today,
I think
like today's current affairs and stuff like that.
April, March 2022?
Yeah, all of this time that we living in, where we breathing in.
All right. I will, let me answer that. Like, there was a time in the history of the Bahamas when true giants rose up. Giants in males and giants in females.
But you going back
They
in
were
history,
also
because I don't want to go
like-
in history yet. I want you to find what it is now, and then we can go back to the history.
Today I'm going to say we still have bias with regard to sexual harassment, standard and status. That comes up, and we've seen it escalating over the last, I would say, probably 10 years. It has escalated to the point where we have so much violence against children and women. I'm not saying there's no violence against men.
Right.
But we have a lot more violence, open violence against women and children. When you can have a baby shot by a gun, that speaks to our society and where we're at on it. Now, whether you call it a bias or a flaw, I don't know what you would want to call it. But that's a major bias that has come to the forefront in the last decade or so. We also have the continuing bias on salaries.
So
There's
before
a
you leave that one, though,
continuing balance.
Catherine, before you leave that one,
Violence.
is that physical violence brought on because of a disparity in terms of the perceived intellect between or achievement between the male and the female, the woman and man, and that there's some
Well,
level of huh?
That's a real deep one, you know. That's really
Okay.
deep because I think it's several characteristics. I think the first characteristic which brings on that type of violence has to do with the way our society has developed, where we have more children being born to what essentially is a single parent family. And these children are raised to a large degree. I don't know the percentage because I didn't pick up any of those statistics
Right.
from our Department of Statistics, so I can't give you any statistics. But there is too large a percentage of children, males and females, that are raised outside of that family with a male presence. You can always tell the difference. If you have a 2-year-old, the 2-year-old's mother speaks to them. They may or may not respond. They may or may not come in line. The dad speaks. They come in line. Even if you can see them sort of wavering, they're going to wave in favor. They're going to land in favor of whatever the father has instructed them to do. That is one of the key issues in our society, I would say, in these recent times.
Wow.
Which has caused the balance in a child's reaction to authority, their reaction to law and order. That balance has shifted. And because the balance has shifted, so too is the perspective of the young people we are raising in this country.
Right.
And you know, like you say, I was very much into the church. I'm into the church and reading the Bible and everything. And I had a vision about 10 years ago. The Holy Spirit told me, until the men of this country become the umbrella of the country, the way God intended, our country is going to continue to suffer these types of ills. Now, you have a lot of people watching this will say, that's just a pile of brainwashing, whatever. But our reality is, not trying to go back into history yet, but if you look at the majority of the households in what we would call the olden days, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, the majority of those households had male heads.
Right.
And the difference in the society then and the society now, I believe, is reflective of that difference. And then you said about achievements. Now, our statistics clearly show we have many more females that are becoming educated, for pursuing higher education, certificates, and so forth. Many more females than males are doing that. And there appears to be, and if she's going to do it, both of us don't have to get stressed out doing it.
Yeah.
And so eventually we see it's more of the male that may not have a continuous form of employment. The male has a tendency to try more things by way of employment than the female. The female will seek continuous employment because the female ends up carrying the responsibility for the children. And so the shift has happened where you have the balance of financial responsibility shifting, whether it's because of education or not. And I can tell you, if you look at our history going back, most of our very productive people had no tertiary degrees. They didn't have any. They can't say they went off to college or anything. But they were phenomenal men and women. And they achieved a lot.
Yeah.
So when it comes to achievement, I think it's wider than just education. I think there's a balance, a human balance in standards that has shifted, responsibilities that have shifted.
So when we look at that now, the issue that I have with what is reported statistically in media and all that kind of stuff putting out there is we're always highlighting these statistics as towards the men that is negative and the women are promoted, all of that stuff, because everybody said that we got to equalize this thing, right? We got to bring parity or equality to how we look at everybody. But I always ask this question and ask people of different backgrounds, and saying that you come from the background of sitting on the bench and all those, you get to see a lot of people in all kind of walks of life and so forth. But my question is this. Yes, we have a deficiency in males or fathers in the home. But my question is this. When we look at the woman being as significant as you have indicated so far, do we also have an absence of mothers in the home? Even though we might have the mother might be in the home, but are they mothering? Because I always saw it when I was growing up, when you talk about the 2-year-old to now, and the male having the look, and he will do. When I was smaller, and I'm sure when you were smaller possibly, it was mommy or grammy. If they look at you, my brother, it's over if you don't comply. So is it really as far, is it really as far out of balance because it's the males who are not there, or is the women who are mothers to step up as mothers?
Yes. I think the female has a responsibility as well. And I always say the decision to have a baby, and this isn't a general statement, and it doesn't include every single body, because we know there are circumstances arising that cause childbirth outside of the norm, as we would like to say we have a norm. But the females too have a responsibility to make sure that if the decision is made by them to get pregnant, to bear a child, then their decision must be equally firm in how they're going to raise that child. You cannot, I think it's an irresponsibility for women to just go ahead and have children. And I've heard some really strange reasons why especially young girls have babies. Children are not toys, and children are not dolls. Children don't have an expiration date. A child is a whole human being deserving of care, protection, and in that protection comes discipline, financial support. That protection where they can feel secure that they have the support of that parent. And women have that responsibility as well as males. But because it's the woman that bears the child, there has to be a conscious decision made by us women. What life am I going to give to this child?
Right.
Am I just going to bear it and let it just grow up as it pleases? Who's going to raise my child? That is a decision that a female must make as well. Like I said, I don't let the men off the hook, but I agree with you. Our women need to be much more conscious of how they're raising their children. I heard the First Lady, Mrs. Davis, she made a statement and she said, we need to be more concerned about our home life. What are we teaching our children? I have a 2-year-old granddaughter, and I think she's brilliant. But I can tell you one thing. She imitates exactly what we do and what we say. So her mother was telling the dogs who kept trying to come in the house, go away, go away, go away. That's now her favorite phrase. She doesn't even tell the dogs go away. She tells human beings. If she doesn't want to do whatever it is you're trying to get her to do, she says, go away, go away. Because she knows it means move off. And so we have to be careful what we do around these children. They may be little, we may think they don't know, but that first 5 to 7 years of their lives, they want everything we do, listen to everything we say. If we show respect to something, they'll show respect. If we show disregard, they'll disregard it. And so, I mean, I don't want to be biased again and make a biased statement, but our reality is mostly women spend time with kids. So the woman has to be really, really, really aware of her impact on those.
Yeah. So you must have a very, very interesting house on a Sunday when everybody comes around. But so before we take this little couple of minute break to pay the piper, then I'll ask us one question before we go, and that is this. Why are these barriers not being broken? What is the obstacles that we are not breaking? Why we can't cause equality to happen after, what is this, 50, 60 years now, thereabouts, of majority rule?
Yeah. But I still think it's important for us to go back and look at that.
Yeah, we can do that right after the break. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but why? Why are we not been able to break the barriers in the Bahamas?
Yes. You want me to answer that now?
Yeah, we can answer that one.
My answer, shall I?
Sorry?
Oh, when you come back.
Whichever one you want to do. When we come back, okay. You've been listening to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles, and we're here with Cathleen Hassan, as I used to call him. I worked with her husband, and we used to have fun with the names. He used to call me Knowles and all kind of things. So we'll be right back to these messages.
Sammy's Chicken. There's nothing like it.
Sometimes it's hard to find a company that can get the job done right. At Mission Complete, we do just that. Mission Complete offers a wide variety of services from janitorial to sanitation to pressure washing pool decks and patios. We're also proud to offer COVID-19 decontamination for your home or business. And for those multi-legged critters, we call in our pest control and rodent team. Why call 4 different companies when you can call just one and get the job done? Call us now and let's get this mission started.
Welcome back to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles. And we're having a very delightful conversation this evening with Cathleen Hassan on break the bias so we could have a sustainable equality, gender equality. Welcome back. So
Hi.
we were just before the break was talking, and we wanted to now, before we jump into the going back in time, because I think going back in time will tell us why we're not answering this question. But maybe you could tell us why we're not answering the question now, and then when we go back, we might find some things that people were doing, why they were successful and we're not successful today in change. You want me to repeat the question? Okay, go ahead.
I think your question was, why are some of the barriers not broken yet?
Yeah, why we struggling to break the barriers? Why aren't we? Because let's just jump right there. When we go back to majority rule and the suffragist women's movement and the like, granted that might have taken a number of years to happen, but there was resolute action that caused change.
Yeah.
And to me, the women's movement and maybe Mr. Stubbs's activity when there was the no vote for deciding of where Saran Randler and was going to cast his support. Those two things were significant in to me, in my mindset, in us becoming a country of majority rule. So, there was those people are people of last week, or the week before, somebody said that they were people of character back then, because I heard it on the radio that a gentleman was saying for them not to take that blank check in the times that we were in, that they had to be some strong character people, right? So let's answer it all in that context. Yeah.
That's a lot. I'm not going to tell you a lie. That's a big area, big question. I'm going to come back to one comment that I made earlier, and I said, during this time when we talk about suffrage movement, there was a lot happening because we had not only gender bias, but we had racial discrimination.
Okay.
Real racial discrimination. The racial discrimination was such that we were still effectively a British colony. So our external government was really British. Even though it's said that we gradually had some form of internal independence, we really did not. Because the British Legislative Council continued to have oversight of everything that we did.
Okay.
And that was really the authority in the Bahamas. We could have decided, and just like with the suffrage movement, those women got up. These women weren't business women, No, let me pull that back. Because, you see, I think the Proverb 31 woman was a businesswoman.
Yeah.
That's another story for a different type of show. But these women were intelligent women. But it was not only the Black Bahamian women.
Right.
There were women who were in this country who were born outside of this country. Mabel Walker was one of those women. She wasn't a Bahamian woman. She married a Bahamian man, Dr. Walker, C.R. Walker. So we had white women, Black women, foreign women, all of them combined their forces together. And the thing that really trumped it, if you do a study of that suffrage movement, the elks, the women, worldwide stood with our women. They brought a force to bear internationally. Because in order for what was attained in the Bahamas for women to get the right to vote, those women went to London. They went to London now, of course, during the time. They had to get mails. to put the arguments forward because that was the time. Those women formed a group of over 500 in this country.
Wow.
And when you get a group like that, something has to happen. And so I want us to keep in mind what unity can accomplish.
Right.
That is a united goal by women, period. No color, no creed, no size, no nationality. Nothing was a barrier. They were simply women who wanted equal right to vote. And then on top of that, they needed to remove the barrier of racial discrimination. And so you had men like Eugene Depuch at the time, you had A.F. Adderley, you had, who was the United Bahamian Party. They voted in favor of it in order for it to get to the council. And so there was a composition of forces that came together as one to remove those two barriers in the 1950s and 60s. So when we get to the point where we see majority rule, that was because those barriers had been removed by a large group of people, not only by Black people.
Right.
Majority rule has taken on a form of racism. So it's brought racism right back to the forefront of people's minds. I don't know if you agree or not, but this is one of the factors that has been brought forward that should have been left behind. You're asking why our barriers are not broken. There's been a reversal of the progress that was made to remove bias against women and to remove racism. And we're back to that point. We've revived it, whether willingly or wittingly or unwittingly. That is what has happened. And so those things have arisen again. That's one answer why we haven't broken the barriers. They've come back. They've come back because I think many people say you have to be aware of where you came from so that you can understand where you're going. I asked someone, a young man, the other day, I said, "Do you know who Slender Billy was?" He said, "No." And it wasn't an answer with regard to, "Please tell me." It was no. I don't know who he is and really I don't care.
Well, that's the question I have also.
We've gone like right back. And we've taken ourselves back. We've literally taken ourselves back. And I think the question you asked was the responsibility of parents. The parents' responsibility is to pass it on. The Bible told the Jews, do not forget to teach your children the word. We say, put it on their foreheads, tie it around your finger. Keep it in front of your face. Yeah. You know, we miss so many things because some of us don't want to say we know the word. Some people don't want to say I'm a Christian. Whatever it is, you know, we started to scatter the things that were important to remind us who we are. How did I get here? You know, people look at me like one young man told me on Bank Lane. I go down Bank Lane a lot. I had my briefcase, and there was a 23-year-old man. I don't know how old he is now. I was a lot younger then, too. But he had 19 criminal matters. 19. He was out on bail. We stood by the prison bus, you know, when it was that huge prison bus that used to park just by the Armored Tree, by the Central Police Station on Bank Lane. And we were just standing there, and I didn't know the man. I don't even know his name now. We were just chatting about it. And you know what he said to me? He said, "Miss, you will never understand those people on that bus." So I asked him why. I said, "Why do you think I wouldn't?" I had on a suit. I was carrying a briefcase. Had my nice shoes on, even stockings that day. I'm really looking sharp, I thought. You know, I was ready for court, ready for business. And so I said, "Why do you think I wouldn't think that? I would know or understand." And he pointed to the one thing. He said, "You're carrying a briefcase." And I said, "What difference does that make?" He said, because you come from money.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately after that, I said,
Yep.
that's not so. I said, what if I told you I was born in May 6th edition? He said, you never were. I said, yes, I was. I can show you the house. And what if I told you my parents completed their education, their formal education, at 12 and 14? What would you say to that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this, well, that. I said, no, you see, you have to know the background of the person before you label them. And we have a tendency to look at people and label them. They don't try to know who they are.
No, they don't.
We don't
no.
ask them what their challenges are. We just look at them and say,
Yeah.
you know,
But
she's
that's
driving
that-
a Mercedes. They don't care.
Right.
Mercedes is 2008. They don't care. They're called Mercedes. We have. See, we have.
Mm-hmm.
We've built in our biases ourselves.
Right.
And that is why we are today finding that we have matters that we have to go over. Things that were overcome long ago. You're aware of when they sat down on Bay Street? Our parents sat in Bay Street, blocked Bay Street, because they wanted certain things to happen. These are persons who took the values necessary to build our country seriously.
Right. So,
Like
so
I
when we
said,
look,
no
go ahead.
divisions.
Yes. So when we
Go
look
ahead.
at that and we say shout outs to Kay Hepburn and I saw one or two others pop up, but I didn't get to see them too clearly when I saw them. But when you touch on that, two things out of that I would say. One was that unity is one thing, but the mere fact that they collaborated, made a big difference as to why they might have been successful. I don't know if you're still there or you dropped off and come back, but this morning you mentioned that there was this ceremony of laying of the wreath for the Bahamian Madonna. You back with us, Kathleen? So that was done in conjunction with the office of the spouse of the Prime Minister and the Oscar and Sylvia Johnson Foundation. And if Ms. Hassan comes back in 2 seconds, I want to ask her about that connection, the foundation, and her family in relation to all of this that we're talking about. And because they would have been persons who would have been on the ground in their various spaces making significant difference. So if you hear the confidence in her voice, then, you know, a lot of that came from, as she would indicated, how the parenting was put on them. And it's a number of them, and so forth. And so we hope that the internet comes back for esteemed guests this evening. But Madam Producer, you have those pictures. Are they clear? So this would have been the picture back in 1975 when the actual statue was unveiled. Sorry, I was looking at the picture. Yes, and so exactly where it is, I will tell you, I said I don't know exactly where it is. I don't go that part of Bay Street all the time, but still. So I made it a point that I will go and find it myself so I could see it, so I can't say that anymore. But when it was brought to my attention that this activity was happening today, then I found it very interesting, because one of the questions that I want to ask Madam Hassan is this the only statue of a woman in the Bahamas other than Queen Victoria? Anybody out there on Facebook on YouTube want to be able to answer the question? Yes, I see you back. But
Yeah, thank you.
is this the only one that we were talking a little bit while you were out about the foundation, the connection with the office of the spouse of the Prime Minister and the ceremony this morning, and the significance of the foundation and the significance your parents did along the way.
Yes. That you're asking me whether that is the only statute of a woman other than Queen Victoria in our country?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Wow.
And certainly it's the only one of an African woman. You know, and I'll just give you briefly, you know, it's interesting because the significance of that arises, I guess, from my dad and my mother. My father was born to a lady out of wedlock.
You want to say their names, please, so that people know?
Oh, my father was Oscar Johnson, Oscar Nathaniel Johnson. And that is him, the man standing at the foot of the statue. And he was, like I said, born to a woman out of wedlock. His mother's name was Bathsheba. And his mother died when he was 4 years old. So he became an orphan. He was a man whose father never acknowledged him. He went to school through the help of women in the Grandstown community. Mrs. Ferris, Elizabeth Stubbs, and another lady who lived with her who we called Titter. And those women made sure he attended school because they said they recognized that he was a smart boy. And they said, this child cannot go astray, the women in that community. And it wasn't just those two women. It was other women in the Angliston, Bain, and Grandstown areas that raised a lot of children like that. There's a group of persons called the Farm Road Boys. Billy Gadet, Tiger Finlayson, Arlington Butler. I mean, so many of those. And just saying those names tell you what these young men from that area accomplished. He finished school at age 12 and he started to work. He supported his siblings who were younger than him. And his two sisters were put in an orphanage. So when they were 8 years old, he went and he got them out of the orphanage. And women in the community raised my aunt Daisy Gator and Kathleen Mackey. They raised these children up into adulthood. The community raised them. And my father never forgot that. He made his life's goal to make sure those people's lives were easier. So he was a frequent visitor to the exchange, and he would get those $4 boxes of fruit and vegetables, and he would take it to people's houses. For Miss Ferris and those he'd pass by, and he'd say, Ferris, what meat you want this week? And he would go to the little butcher that was on the corner by Milo Butler and Sons. The building is there, the butcher's gone. Go there and buy that meat, and he would distribute meat among these young ladies or these women in the community who themselves were raising children under similar circumstances. And he did that even when he was on dialysis, and before he died at 78, he insisted that we continue to take him to get those boxes. So he rose from an orphan. And my mother, Sylvia Ethelyn Roberts Johnson, she's the third daughter. She was the third daughter of Enoch Pedro Roberts and Gladys Rain Roberts. And that's them on this photograph. My mother has what looks like a turban cap. That's my father standing next to my mother on her left. Behind my mother is Cora, my older sister. In front of Daddy is Danny Johnson, my brother Daniel Johnson. And to the left of Daddy is Doris Johnson, Dame Doris Johnson. Those are the persons who are instrumental. You see, they have on these uniforms, and they were called the Women's Movement in the Bahamas. These were some significant events and significant people. What came out of it, and this is the purpose behind the foundation, both of my parents, Oscar Johnson and Sylvia Johnson, both of them, my mother ran the Children's Emergency Hostel for many years. She was the matron down there. So he was an orphan, and she took over the responsibility for orphans. My parents were always intrinsically grounded in the work of the people of the Bahamas, looking to lift them up, build them up, and encourage them. So the foundation's focus is really to continue that, because from very ordinary people came extraordinary circumstances. And they are not the only ones. You know, there are a lot of unsung heroes in this country who you'll never hear about.
Right.
Because we just don't do our history properly. We don't chronicle it. We don't publish it in books. And so we miss out on a lot of people who did tremendous work, whether in the religious field. You have all of those reverends who built up the Black community through their churches, whether Baptist or Anglicans. You had the Catholics in the community. They did education. And so these people are the unsung heroes. Like I said, with the suffrage movement, there were almost 400 women who signed a piece of paper. So we may hear about 5. You know, we hear about Dame Doris, we hear about Mabel Walker, we hear about Mrs. Mary Ingram, who was a pivotal. Mary Ingram, she was a warrior woman. She was a warrior. I mean, these women, they were some serious women, you know. You have all of them. You had, I mean, I was writing down some of the names of these women, you know. You had Lillian Isaacs, Myrtle Ray, Effie Archer. Effie Archer was my one of my cousins in the background. Mamie Aswood. In fact, your producer's grandmother was Mamie Aswood. Jenny Smith. Many, many women. You have, I mean, women whose shoulders we stand on. You have Dame Janet Bostwick. We have Dame Joan Sawyer. We have Cynthia Mother Pratt. We have Ruby Ann Darling. She was the first woman who actually decided to go and register to vote when we got the vote. Janet Bostwick, she's the first female MP. We have Ruth Miller, Sylvia Johnson, my mother. You have Paula Mitchell, Talitha Strawn. You have, I mean, there's so many of them. You have Arlene Wisdom, my sisters, my cousins. We were all raised in that. You know, you have all of my family from Abou and all over. These women really dug down. The Mosses, the Shermans, the Archers, the Wisdoms. Andre Wisdom, who was pivotal in starting with Jane Fernanda. 3 schools in this country. Do we even hear about them? No. You have so many women that you can name, and I'm sure every person listening on this show, they know a number of people. We need to start to list these people's names, do a little bio with regard to all of them, and publish a book on heroes. You know, we need to do things like this. We are getting bogged down in this country in minutia. You know, we're talking about little things, and we're making them massive mountains. They are pure distractions to where we should be going as a country. Pure distractions. Those women from the 50s and 60s who toiled for 10 years to just get the right to vote. And you know something what is interesting? With them fighting for the right to vote, they enable the man, the male, who was not an owner of property to have the right to vote.
Right to vote. Right.
Open that. These are significant milestones that we now take for granted. You know, I'm not voting in this election because I just don't like what so-and-so said. Really? These women put their all on the line for you to have a vote, and you're going to go. See, we are changing our own landscape by failing to appreciate what we came through to get here. We talk about the strike, you know, that strike and the big strike and everything. The general strike. You know, we need to know these things so we can stop getting lost in the fact of who should be first on the line and who should be second. Really, does it matter? You're on the line. You're literally on the line. What's the issue? You know, and a big thing for me is this domestic violence. I don't even know how to categorize it anymore. We are still talking about marital rape. Really? Do you know there was a decision made by the Privy Council regarding a woman being raped in marriage? Yeah,
When was that?
1991.
91? Okay.
1991. Yeah. Are we still talking about it? Why? Why are we still talking about it? It was already determined. A rape is a rape.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. But we're still talking about it. Why? You see,
Yeah. My only challenge with that is how do you prove it? Because all the magistrates and the Supreme Court judges that I've spoken to said all the laws have to be written so that it's provable. So that I don't know if I'm saying it right, but you just can't have a law and it's not structured such that people could literally
How do
prove
you
it
prove-
in-house.
how
I don't.
do you
I'm
prove
not questioning it. I'm just saying that's. Yeah.
No, listen. Just to see this. This is international women.
Yeah.
How do you prove a woman is raped? Of any age. How do you prove a woman is raped? There are physiological signs of a rape.
Okay.
Physiological.
Mm-hmm.
I can start with that.
Mm-hmm.
And you take the rest of the evidence and you see if it's beyond a reasonable doubt. Test it the way you test every other criminal act. We cannot hide behind relationships. One of the things which this is my personal opinion, that I see growing as a form of domestic violence in this country is intra-family. Intra-family.
Intro? Okay, intro. Mm-hmm.
You have those households where there's not a male head that has sons.
Mm-hmm.
The sons are now starting to be violent towards their mothers. That sounds shocking, maybe. See, when you talk about domestic, that is the topic.
Mm-hmm.
That is the topic that we need to look at if we're going to talk about violence.
But we could bring you back to speak to that topic by itself because that takes a
topic.
Yes, I think and you are right that I see that is the most topical topic that keeps coming up over and over and over and over again. That because it's bothering people and it's a real problem that we have. I don't support any kind of rape. My only question is how do you prove it? I hear what you said, but we need to break those down too to find out. And because a lot of times we do things and we write laws and stuff like that don't really do what the law was said intended to do. That's just my observation. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, you see, this is the dichotomy we have. Our jurisdiction has precedent, that means case law gets made, as well as statutory or legislative law. A lot happens with case law. A lot.
Okay.
And the case law has far exceeded what the legislation states. Some of our laws are 1925.
Wow.
They're not updated. Our society has grown and the needs of the society have grown. We've become a more complex society. There's no need to say, well, our legislation really doesn't provide for that. Okay, it's happening. It's happening. And if it's happening, find a resolution.
Right.
We can't wait for these acts to be prepared and promulgated. No. This woman is being brutalized every day.
Right.
She's being brutalized and she's being harmed, and psychologically, those in her household are being harmed. We're breaking up an entire family's mental health while we're waiting for somebody to decide that they're actually going to promulgate a law. Why? We have to be more progressive. I think we could talk to anybody in the world from our telephones. We're doing banking from our telephones. We're doing international banking from our telephones. Are you telling me our society has to continue to walk these roads while we wait? And who is it having these debates? Is it females having the debates? I'm only throwing that out there. Happy, I don't want to put you on the spot with this, but
No, but before you put me on the spot, you can put me on the spot. But before you put me on the spot, what I find, particularly with observing some of the referendums and the like and stuff like that, a lot of times it's the females who are actually voting or pushing against. At least those who come out and do it. There might be a bigger contingent who are not active, but the active ones are some of the ones who are actually causing things not to happen. In some instances,
yes,
not all instances. Okay.
It's he who shouts loudest, huh? Who shouts loudest.
Okay.
You have choreographed, I hope I can come out of my house tomorrow, but you have choreographed actions being taken to bring about a result that they want. And those are the persons who you hear the most. You don't really hear the persons like me. I mean, You have me on your show. I don't know if I'll ever come back on, but
No,
I don't get
you
invited
can come
to
back
many.
because you're the type of people we want on the show who we could talk about stuff that is not a part of the normal narrative, because the normal narrative is not getting us anywhere where we want to go. The majority of us, that
Correct.
is. Okay, so that's why
Yeah, and
we
so-
have this show. That's the sole purpose of this show, is to get
We have-
out information.
A different idea, because we have to recognize that. We have to recognize it, and we have to recognize agendas which are set for us not to progress. We have political time frames in our country.
Okay.
And unfortunately, what we have, because the political side is timed. If something isn't successful during a period of time, it may die. Just go away until maybe the other ones come back in. Again, it's another waiting game. The issues demonstrated by the suffrage movement and by the Eugene Depuch's movement when he proposed to Parliament to outlaw racism. See,
And
those are
discrimination.
concrete. Yeah, discrimination. Sorry, those are concrete steps taken without any overriding agendas, except that all
Right,
parties
which-
came together, all persons in the community came together, and they wrote it out.
Yeah, that was the second point
And
I was
that's
going to
when-
say.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, no, I
Sorry.
was going to say the second point I was going to say, the first one was the collaboration on being unified, and the second one was exactly what you just touched on. There was no personal agenda for it. Excuse me, yeah. So,
And that is, I think that's fundamental to a progressive
give me
society.
tissue. Yeah, excuse me a sec. All right, my back. Yes, I'm back. Sorry about that, people.
No,
So when we look at that now, then we have the single statue that is very symbolic, as you articulated earlier. And I encourage everybody, whoever walks this earth here in Nassau, Bahamas, to find the statue and take a good look at it. Absorb it and see if it moves your spirit in any which way. But one of the questions I asked Dr. Curry when we had him on the show, Chris Curry, why do we have some of these statues out in the forefront and some of these other ones behind, as we used to say in the old days, God back? Because when your brother Danny mentioned it to me, I was like, so, okay, this is no statue, great. And he said, no, this been around since 75. And I said, well, where you been hiding it?
75
And
is
he said-
from 1968.
68? Well, that's worse than what he
68.
told me, yeah. Yeah, okay.
The
So anyway,
resolution
that's,
when-
the resolution was
sorry.
put forward in 75 then. That's what you're saying.
No,
Anyway.
the statute was dedicated in 75.
Oh, it's daddy. Okay, fair enough. So, okay, the
See,
bottom
you
line is
had
this.
a period of time. You had
Yes.
a period of time, cooperation with the entire parliament did it.
Wow, right. Anyway, before I get my brain too twisted up, because you put me on some back in my history books, which is partly sitting to his foot and some other people like Sean McQueenie and other people who got a lot of historic knowledge in their head and pick their brains. But the statue, where it is, my question is not necessarily just that statue, but that one is more significant now that you tell me that there's only one, is from a sustainable point of view of, we talk about gender equality, but just for sustainable for our culture and history and heritage and knowing who he is, as Loftus Roker said on the show, was in terms of that, what is the significance of these statues and the like, and where they are positioned so that people could see them on a day-to-day basis, and what does that do for us? I mean, back in the day, the Penn administration had the slogan called "It's Better in the Bahamas," which started out as being something to promote for the tourists. But when I understood he got a hold of it, then his idea was that it was to build up our confidence as a people. That, okay, you are just as good as anybody else in the world, or you could do it just as or better than them, kind of thing. So, I mean, it was two-directional, which, again, is another thing that people today don't seem to be able to be multifaceted, right? We all one-dimensional and some like. But the question basically is do we need more of these statues and iconic things out in the public so people could see it every day, including the sea, because we're getting less and less able to see the sea in Nassau.
That's a different show. Regarding the statutes, I think the statute brings alive for general reminder, an era, an event, an accomplishment. That is what these are symbolic of. It's okay for us to have the conch shell. It's okay for us to have the pigeon, the white crown pigeon. It's okay for us to have these other symbols. We seem to be very hesitant in honoring the people who make changes in your country. Now, obviously, you can't do every single person, but there has to be a committee, a standing committee, not a committee of the House. We need to just have some civic committees, who bring this kind of information forward together with the archivists and the genealogists and all these people who put things together and say, you need to put this out now.
Right.
There are more historical books on the Bahamas in London. Particularly, I went into a library in the university Danny went to. I can't remember the name. But I went into a library over there. They had sections of Bahamian historical books in all forms, pictures, short stories, poems, all sorts of things, historical stuff that I'd never seen in the Bahamas. We have to, as a people, determine if we want to be a people. Not just little scrub gangs. I mean, no offense to the Junkanoo.
I know what you mean.
No, we have to stop that. We have to stop saying, I don't like you because, 25 years ago, I heard that somebody said something. No. Let's look forward. Our motto is forward, upward, onward, together. That is the motto of this country. We had these magnificent men who penned all these lovely things for us. We don't do it. We don't even follow it. We throw it out here and there. But we're not really serious about it as a people. And unfortunately, I think even our leaders, our current leaders, have a responsibility to chart a course for the Bahamas, not a course for them. No, too many men now want to leave a legacy.
Right.
You want to leave a legacy which just totally screws up the whole balance of our country. Is that really what's important for us? So the rest of us just flounder and try to keep our heads above water if we can? No. It has to be bigger and it has to be better. So yes, historically, I lived through that period. I was in my teen years when majority rule came into play. I remember where I stood, down by Parliament. You know, the palm tree is no longer there.
Right.
But I remember the spot I stood. I was so proud. I mean, I was really proud, and I kept that pride. When I went off to school, I knew I was coming home. There was no question of me staying abroad. I knew I was coming home to work. I was going to make a contribution to this country the way I saw those other people before me make a contribution. But you know what? We've become so segmented that persons are afraid to bring you in. You know, I had somebody told me, I want to appoint you to a committee, but I'm not sure. I think you may be too strong. What does that mean? What? I cannot make a contribution? Why not? We have to learn the art of accepting people's strengths and including those strengths into our equation. We have to do it if we intend truly to go upward, onward, and together.
Right. And so as we wrap up here now, this is you brought into the picture what is a fundamental pillar of actually everything I do almost, but Danny and I always have this conversation a little bit. So we have all of these instruments of who he is, the national anthem, the coat of arms, the pledge, all of these things, the Constitution. But we don't seem to be following what any of those things are actually saying. I don't know if you see that in any of these things. The other day I went to an event and they didn't even have a national anthem, right? And so, you know.
No, you know, we have lost. I think we've really taken our eye off the ball. We've really taken it off. It's just like when any event happens. You know, I heard Danny say today, Brave Davis's dad, who they call Big Brave,
right,
opened every PLP meeting with prayer, and he closed it with prayer. See, whatever happened between the prayer and the prayer, that ended right with that last prayer. It brings balance back to our focus. All the little things I hear, you know, I mean, God bless those people who run talk shows, but some of those talk shows are more divisive than they are uplifting. What are we going to do? I know the airwaves have been liberated, but really, when we want to talk about issues impacting our country and the people of this country, especially this upcoming generation from 0 to 30, that's our future.
Right.
When you look at our table, what are we serving those people? What is it that we're saying? Feed on this. Really?
A lot of them are misunderstood too, because a lot of them want to be contributors and significant contributors, but not being integrated into the system or life and so forth.
Yeah. You know, we have to realize that inclusion doesn't mean that you have to have a title, that you need to have a color, that you need to be in this group or that group. Do you have a talent that we can use? The Bible tells us every one of us has a talent and a purpose. Everyone. There's none without one. And so if we open up our minds and truly say, I'm Bahamian. You know, like I have this show, What's a True Bahamian? What is that? What is that? What's a true Bahamian? I born here. I'm called Bahamian. Why do you want to break down my identity? And all these things are just distractions. There's just so many distractions.
They are
which
people
are
who are not
unnecessary.
born, people who are not born here who have more affinity to the culture and our way of life than some people who are actually born here who live and do other
And they
things.
make a better contribution and a greater contribution.
Yes. So we just
You
gotta
know,
find a way to collaborate.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And I think there's many ways to collaborate,
Yes. But it's been awesome talking with you tonight, Madam Hassan. But before we go, we always give our guests the opportunity if there's something that you would like to share. I asked you a lot of questions, but what you like to share with the public and specifically these days and times and celebrating the Women's Day, the International Women's Day. What would be your vision? Because we always want to know where we go from here. So what would you like to say?
And despite everything I have said, and the world keeps saying we want to have equality, I don't believe we will ever achieve true equality simply for the fact that men and women are different.
Yes.
What I focus on as a female, my husband doesn't focus on that. Women are into minutia. We want to know why this piece of paper on the floor. The man ain't checking for that piece of paper because he say, you know what, someone can pick that up soon. I don't need to worry about the piece of paper. The female is going to worry about the piece of paper. And so we have to first acknowledge that we are different. And because we actually are different, our focus is going to be different. But in that difference, I wouldn't say that we have to achieve equality, that equal line, those equal line. I don't think it's possible to have that. But I think on many layers, violence has to cease, domestic or otherwise. We have to push for that. We need to push for equal earning between men and women for the same job. And then we need to try to remove biases. And there are a lot of hidden biases we have, and you can see them cluttering our landscape at the moment with all the talk that's going on. So there are areas that we have to raise. As Ann Davis again, she said today, it seems as though when you break through a glass ceiling, the ceiling keeps getting raised. It just goes higher and higher. And so we're left with the same issues, and the same issues just perpetuate. And that is killing our country. And so I'd like to see us as a people honestly get together openly, not for any agenda save for the national agenda. We have to work to save the Bahamas and its people.
Yes.
And that's my final comment.
Awesome. And I thought you were going to touch on the leadership in that scenario in terms of helping women become greater leaders. Not saying men are better leaders or anything, but just greater leaders. Because we want everybody to keep raising that lid of leadership.
Tell you, if you look at the European countries, just a skim would find that the majority of European countries now are headed by females, very strong females. Their economies are improving significantly under their leadership, and they're still females. They're not trying to be males. You have Mia Mottley down in Barbados. She did a tremendous thing in the year 2021. She took Barbados out of the Commonwealth. Out of the Commonwealth. These moves are significant. And what are we doing in here? We're talking small things.
Rowan.
Let's stop the small. Yeah, let's cut that out. Let's go for a bigger agenda. I don't have to become male to have a top job in a technology firm.
Right.
I can get a top job in a firm because I trained for it. We have to treat people better than we treat them. We have to drop all of these things. We are just human beings. Bible says from dust you came and from dust you're going to return.
That's true. Yes. Cool. Well, I think you froze there.
In between,
good things. Go ahead. No, I'm saying you froze. So you go ahead. You continue. I think your internet is going. Cool. Well, it's been real. It's been lightning. It's been fantastic. And I'm coming to dinner on Sunday so I could see the 2-year-old in action. It's been fun. We'd love to have you come back so we could talk about some of these specific items and where we're going and where we need to go and what we need to do. So we'll always pause, think about it intentionally, and consider where we go from here in that whole picture. We would like to thank you, Madam Hassan, for being here tonight and enjoying our company and making this day a special day for many, 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 many out there, men and women, so that we could raise the lid here in the Bahamas and around the world. I don't know if your mic is back on, or can you hear me? Oh, I can't hear you.
there I am.
No? Yeah. Okay, yes, yeah. So, thank you kindly again, and say hello to the family. I will make it a point to go and see the statue, take my pictures so everybody know I was there, and encourage everybody else out there to go and be there. Madam Producer,
Thank
we
you very
thank you.
much.
Thank you everybody on social media. Be safe, enjoy life, and see you next
Yes.
week. Good evening.
Good evening.
Enjoyed the show? Then subscribe to us for more educational and inspirational content. Ring the bell so you never miss a show. Let's change the narrative 242